Colonia Dignidad. We know that Nazis had fled post-World War II, and many of them went to South America. But did you know there was a rural Chilean cult that harbored many of these Nazis and engaged in many nefarious acts? And today we're going to be breaking it all down. If you've never heard of Colonia Dignidad, this is a secretive German enclave established in rural Chile in 1961 by a gentleman named Paul Schäfer, who fled Germany following allegations of child abuse. Presented to the outside world as charitable, religious community, Colonia Dignidad concealed a reality of the worst human rights abuses you could imagine. I mean, child exploitation, forced labor, collaboration with Chilean military dictatorship. I mean, the worst stuff imaginable. And the story of Colonia Dignidad is an example of how a charismatic leader, an authoritarian ideology, and a state complicit with abuse enabled decades of suffering behind closed doors. So today, we're going to dive deep on this bizarre chapter of history known as the Nazi P3do cult, and how they were able to take advantage of the needy and legally adopt children without consent. So without further ado, let's jump in. So who was this guy Paul Schäfer? All right, he was born in a little town called Bonn on December 4th, 1921. He's the third son of a woman named Anna Schmitz. His father, Jacob Schäfer, disappeared after they divorced in 1932. And Paul Schäfer was 10 years old at the time, and his mother remarried in 1933. And according to Schäfer, his father had died in the war, as did his two older brothers. And at the age of 6, Paul Schäfer was severely injured in his eye. And from then on, he wore a glass eye that becomes, sort of emblematic of his myopic view on the world. And at the age of 18, Schäfer moved to a small town near Cologne. And in October 1940, he was called up for a few months in the Reich Labor Services. This was basically a Nazi paramilitary force in a town nearby. Due to his eye injury, he was not deployed to the front, and in 1941, he was drafted for a military service and stationed in a small town known as Münster, presumably as a medic, but no one is really clear. Due to the sparse information about Schäfer's role during the Second World War, there are later, many different speculations about his involvement in other, Nazi crimes. Specifically mentioned were possible assignments in forced labor camps and a subcamp of the Buchenwald concentration camp. Again, none of this necessarily can be verified, but again, many theories about what he was doing abound. After the war, he becomes active as a lay preacher and a youth worker in the Evangelical Free Church. Schäfer was known for his charisma and this sort of authoritarian style, you could say, that he was very convicted, and he would speak with absolute certainty. And as a result, he attracted many people, after the war, specifically war widows and their children. And he founded what he called the Private Social Mission, which operated basically as like an orphanage and some type of Christian charity. And Schäfer's approach was marked by this sort of like strict, German discipline and this focus on obedience, which later we'll see kind of lays the groundwork for his leadership style in Chile. So by the 1950s, Schäfer's activities in Germany came under some suspicion. Parents and authorities raised concern about his inappropriate behavior with some of the children in his care. And in 1961, the German police opened a formal investigation into these allegations. So in order to evade prosecution, he leaves. He flees Germany and takes with him a group of loyal followers, including many of their children. The circumstances of their departure were, I guess, legally questionable, you could say, as some children were removed from their families really without proper consent. So, him and his followers, they go to Chile in 1961, seeking to escape the legal prosecution that they were facing in Germany. And upon their arrival, they acquired this large tract of land near a town called Parral in central Chile. The Chilean government granted legal status to the group, officially recognizing it as the Sociedad Benefactora y Educacional Dignidad. Gabe, how was my pronunciation on that? That was horrible. Thank you. I appreciate that. The legal recognition basically allowed Schäfer and his group to kind of like establish themselves with a degree of protection, right? Like they are coming here and we're being legit and above board. And this lays the foundation for the enclave that would later become Colonia Dignidad. The community is, when they're structuring it initially, it's this kind of closed settlement, primarily of German immigrants. And at its height, Colonia Dignidad had about 300 individuals, most of them brought from Germany under Schäfer's leadership. And the settlement was physically isolated. I mean, you can see a picture of it here. It's surrounded by fences and guarded entrances, and contact with the outside world was pretty limited. I mean, this is like an old cult tactic, right? You take people from a place, I mean, Jonestown is the most infamous example, and you move them to a new place and they don't know anyone, they don't necessarily speak the language. So they're forced to be very isolationist, which, as we'll learn, can become rampant for all types of terrible abuses. So the community operates, as its own sort of like, agrarian, industrial kind of commune in a way. And it has its own internal systems and effectively functions as a state within a state. And Schäfer exercises absolute control over all the people and all aspects of their life within Colonia Dignidad. He enforces a regime of, discipline and surveillance and obedience, using a lot of like religious ideology as the central tool for keeping all of this authority. And members were subjected to very rigorous routines of, monitoring and isolation from Chilean society, and then even their own families within the enclave. And religious doctrine was used to justify and reinforce a lot of this stuff. And this, again, ensured that Schäfer would be the head authoritarian within this little subcommunity. So within the colony, Schäfer established this hierarchy system that relied on, all the things from discipline to basically suppression of like their individual rights. He presented himself as this spiritual leader, using religion, but really a pseudo-religious discourse to legitimize his authority over all the people within this community. And this framework was centered on, again, just maintaining control of all the people. The structure of the community is characterized by separation of family units and prohibition of a lot of interpersonal relationships and this enforcement of a rigid daily routine. So he kind of enforced almost like a Gestapo in a way inside the colony. People were constantly monitoring each other, and they were encouraged to report to each other about someone else potentially going outside the commune or having private closed discourse with other people within the community. And this environment of constant monitoring and fear was the key element upholding the community's order and ultimately Schäfer's dominance. Many of the members were denied access to any type of external media or communicating with outsiders, and if anyone did, they'd be severely punished within the commune. Personal bonds, including, romantic or even family relationships, were suppressed in order to eliminate, potential alliances that could go against Schäfer's authority. And anyone that did question his authority was met with severe punishment, again, reinforcing the system where human rights violations were systematically and, deeply embedded in the community's life every single day. So this is where it starts to get even more effed up. So you have this guy Schäfer, right? And he starts to forcibly remove children from their parents and basically commit them to communal care. So parents with their kids, he's now severing the family ties and saying these children are now the children of the commune and not your kids specifically. And custody rights were then transferred to other group members, ensuring that the children were indoctrinated into the rigid hierarchy and then, again, subjected to all these abuses. I mean, it's just crazy. You have to think, like, these people, they go through this war in Germany. And again, many of them were on the wrong side, as you can imagine. But these kids are ostensibly innocent. And the widows, they were at home. And so now they're moved away from their families and their immediate families, put into a different country. And then their kids are forcibly taken from them within the commune in a place that they know nothing about, with a language that they can't speak. They don't even know who to go to. They can't even leave the commune. So now their kids are taken from, I have a kid. I have a 7-month-old little baby boy. And the idea that someone would take my kid, it'd be like agonizing. It's like insane to think that this guy would forcibly take their kids, especially if you know that he's being investigated for child abuse back in Germany. It's like absurd. So from the foundation of the colony, they start now actively reaching out to impoverished families in the surrounding rural areas. And this is a classic, again, like abuser cult move where they find the most disenfranchised people that need support, offer them the support, and then, systematically abuse them either through forced labor or, sexual abuse, all this other terrible shit. So what they would do is they would go around offering free medical care and educational opportunities to local kids. And these services were used to build trust and kind of bring families in who lacked access to these basic resources. Again, positioning the commune as this benevolent kind of force within the region. So they go to these people and they say, hey, your kid, he's really smart, but he's not getting access to the right education. We come from Germany where we have all these educational opportunities. Wouldn't you want your kid to have access to the most, tip-top educational opportunities? And the parents are like, yeah, I guess. And then they pull in more people, again, pull them away from their communities, and now they've fully got their grips on them. So many of the local families, they kind of got persuaded and they entrusted their kids to the commune, unaware of the true nature of what Schäfer was doing, there or even back in Germany. And they believed their children would receive better living conditions and just offering them an opportunity outside of the poverty that they were experiencing. So within the colony now, both German and Chilean children are becoming victims of this systemic abuse and exploitation. And the structure of the commune, again, with its hierarchy, isolation, and snitching culture where people were monitoring each other at all times, facilitated and concealed the crimes. The abuse of the minors, especially boys, was a central ongoing crime within the enclave. And the leadership not only, protected, but just enabled all of this to happen within the community. I mean, it's just crazy that like these people would just kind of, just turn the other way. But if this guy is saying like, hey, we'll kill you, we'll send you to the authorities, we can get you deported, you'll never see your kid again. He now has, claim to you and your entire family. And again, this abuse is not only to the children that were the Germans, but local families as well that were like lured in under these false pretenses. So the leadership within this colony, not only was it Schäfer, but it was many people with their backgrounds that were linked to the Nazi Germans and other far-right extremist groups that existed in that area. So a researcher, Jan Steele, documented that amongst Paul Schäfer's followers were people who had been part of this Nazi regime and had strong sympathies for the ideology even after the war. So the Enclave's founder, Schäfer himself, was a former member of the Hitler Youth and a medic during World War II. So the presence of former Nazis and these far-right extremists contributed to this authoritarian and hierarchical structure that defined the community. These people had already been brainwashed and indoctrinated under these Nazi ideals. And so it was much easier to co-opt them into now taking on this class of ideas, which frankly is not that different, right? It's a system of surveillance and abuse. And this ideology, along with, this nostalgia for the German homeland and the hierarchy and the religion, were all justifications for his authority. So Schäfer himself, as the head of the commune, but many of the other hierarchs that he kind of brought in as the, top brass of the commune, would, through a system of surveillance and punishment, would force people not only into this sexual abuse, but also into forced labor. And people, specifically the natives, the Chileans of the region, adults and children, were forced under harsh conditions to work, 16-hour days doing manual labor. And anyone that dissented or stepped out would then be either tortured or threatened with torture. And again, this form of, psychological and physical abuse just led to a cyclical nature where people were then, more and more inclined to listen to everything that he said. So throughout the 60s, Schäfer had established a colony that was built on this type of pseudo-religious, borderline Nazi authoritarian abuse. And by the 70s, this abuse had been going on for a decade. The political tensions of Chile created a system where they could now rely on the turbulence of the local political government. So by the 1970s, Schäfer and the leadership of Colonia Dignidad aligned themselves with the country's political right. This strategic alignment was motivated by the fear of, land reform policies that was then proposed by the president Salvador Allende and his government that then threatened the enclave's extensive property holdings. And if you infringe on the property holdings, then the isolationistic methods of control would then be lost. So Schäfer and his followers sought protection and political favor by supporting the conservative right-wing actors that opposed the president's reforms. Shortly thereafter, there was a military coup by General Augusto Pinochet in 1973. Colonia Dignidad became directly involved in the apparatus of this kind of state repression, and the enclave served as a clandestine site for detention and torture and kidnappings and disappearances of political prisoners. So as much as Colonia Dignidad needed some type of government support to facilitate their abuse and control, the government also needed a place, sort of a black site, to then carry out their atrocities as well. This facility and the infrastructure of the colony were then made available to the Chilean secret police, and the enclave became notorious as a center for basically human rights abuses. This was a concentration camp now existing in Chile with Nazi ideology. And the crimes were, again, a part of this systemic collaboration between Colonia Dignidad and the Pinochet regime. And the relationship between the dictatorship and Schäfer was further underscored by personal visits from high-ranking officials. I mean, at one point, Augusto Pinochet himself, along with the secret police chief Manuel Contreras, visited the enclave, demonstrating the close ties between the community and this regime. The facilities of Colonia Dignidad were then not only used for the repression and intelligence operations, but also as this support between the dictatorship and the abuser at this time. So now Schäfer and his commune is completely protected by the political nature of the place and the government that's in charge. And they're both mutually benefiting. The enclave provides a space for detention and torture and disappearance of Pinochet's enemies, and Schäfer is now able to carry on his isolationist, systemic, oppressive regime without anyone trying to come in and stop him. So despite many attempts to stay sort of secure and covered up, public knowledge and reports about the crimes occurring within the colony went out there, and people started to talk about it. But Pinochet's government allowed the commune to operate with complete impunity. The Chilean state not only failed to intervene, but also provided protection and legal status to the enclave's leadership, ensuring that the investigation into the abuses would never be sought after. The climate of this impunity persisted all the way through the dictatorship, even as evidence of torture and kidnappings and abuse continued to mount. So this shared nature of, sort of protection and impunity made it slow for anyone to get justice at the end of the regime. But ultimately, in the transition to democracy in Chile, brought this renewed scrutiny to the crimes committed by the people at Colonia Dignidad. So as the dictatorship of Pinochet ended and the Chilean society began to address the legacy of human rights abuses, Paul Schäfer and his enclave became the subject of public and judicial attention. About time, right? The period at this point saw increased efforts from survivors and advocates to basically go to the Chilean state to investigate and expose all the violations that occurred within the commune. Everything from, like I said, forced labor to sexual abuse, and the collaboration with the Pinochet regime in exchange for, disappearing political opponents. So by 1997, after mounting legal pressure and public outcry, Schäfer fled Chile to evade prosecution for his sexual crimes and other crimes of forced labor, etc. And he remained a fugitive for several years until his arrest in Argentina in 2005. I mean, just imagine how long this was. He develops and actually creates the commune in 1961. He starts this in Germany in the 1950s. So this guy goes from the 1950s until 2005. I mean, straight up 5 decades, 50 years of abuse and murder and torture. And at that point, only then in 2005, is he actually caught and put on trial for his crimes. He's extradited to Chile, and Schäfer was convicted of many, many counts of abuse on minors, amongst other things, and received a lengthy prison sentence, marking this moment of accountability for the leadership of Colonia Dignidad. And despite the developments, the investigation into the full extent of the abuses and the disappearances connected to Colonia Dignidad continued. I mean, survivors and advocates persisted in their efforts to achieve this type of justice, and the process was slow and arduous and bureaucratic, and again, complicated by the enclave's decades of secrecy and involvement with not only the Chilean, but also the German authorities. But nonetheless, the ongoing work of the advocates and their attorneys was crucial in confronting the legacy of Colonia Dignidad and ensuring that the crimes there would never be forgotten or repeated. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because I want to talk to you about your daddy. Yes, your father. Think about that guy. A good guy, probably fixes stuff with like duct tape and paper clips, things like that. And every Father's Day, you got to think, okay, what do I get him? And you have no idea. He's like, oh, just get me socks. I don't want anything. So you end up writing a letter, give it to him. He's reading it like, what kind of son did I raise? Well, this Father's Day, get him something that he will actually use every day. And that is why I want to talk to you about Raycon. Yes, Raycon's everyday earbuds. They are perfect for dads who are on the go, doing stuff. They want to break, whether it's, listening to Led Zeppelin or a podcast about aliens or just ignoring your mom. Raycons will deliver crystal clear sound and a comfortable fit at an affordable price. That's right. They got active noise cancellation. That's a game changer. You don't have any wires. There's no drama. I keep mine in my backpack. I like to use them on planes. And the other thing that I love about Raycons is that they're so affordable and economically priced. I mean, for the cost of a competitor earbud, you could get 2 or even 3 of these Raycons. So if you're on the plane, you lose one, you took a nap, you wake up, oh, where did it go? Guess what? You got another one in your backpack. They're amazing. I use them when I'm at the gym, walking around the city, working on a podcast, stuff like that. It's the best. So if you're interested in supporting this podcast, as well as your father and keeping your family together, go to buyraycon.com/campgagnon and you will get 15% off everything on the website. That's right. Everything on the website, 15% off. That is buyraycon.com/campgagnon. Support your dad. Support your ears. Support this podcast. That's Raycon. Sounds like a win. Let's get back to the pod. Paul Schäfer, fortunately, died of heart failure in 2010 in a prison hospital in Santiago, Chile. I mean, thank God. Ugh. I hate these stories sometimes because you just like, the bad guys never get caught. They just die somewhere, But again, it took him until 2010. How old is he when he finally died? Can you find that out? I mean, he lived out, oh my God. I mean, he was 88 when he died. I mean, you can't kill an 88-year-old sooner. It's crazy that he didn't just get caught up in prison or something, right? You would think someone in prison would be like, yo, we got to get this dude.
Especially for the trial crimes, that's usually
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's crazy that it took that long. Like, dude, just blow on him or something. Like, it's how easy would it be to kill an 88-year-old, right?
A single punch, really.
Yeah, like a punch, I don't know, like hide his Skechers or something. Like it just he's a trip away from just turning to dust. I mean, I hate this shit. But ultimately, he dies, and it sort of marks the end of the era for Colonia Dignidad, as he had ruled the enclave with this authority for decades. And his passing was seen by many of the survivors as a form of justice. He's in prison for the rest of his life. But again, it took so long. And, many of the victims continue to try to seek full accountability because it wasn't just him, but it was many others. And the final blow to Colonia Dignidad came after Schäfer fled the commune in the 90s to escape this prosecution, leading to a lot of scrutiny and intervention by the Chilean authorities. Once he was captured and extradited, the control that he had at all collapsed, right? He was able to still have some type of proxy control while he was in Argentina. And the community, renamed to Villa Bavaria, gradually loosened its internal restrictions, and the residents were then allowed to leave and connect with the outside world. The Chilean authorities ultimately raided the site multiple times, uncovering the evidence of this type of abuse in collaboration with the Pinochet regime. And the loss of the leadership with the ongoing legal investigation basically dismantled the cults, and any type of their authority or, the impunity that they had on the people. I mean, I just like these cults and their leadership. It's just crazy. Like one of the things I always think about is the conversation I had with this guy Jennings Brown, where he talked about people kind of getting stuck in these cults. And back in the day, to develop a cult, you had to get people in person. You had to meet someone in real life and bring them in. And once they were in, it was probably easier to keep them. But nowadays, these cults exist online. It's like Facebook groups and forums and Instagram chats and all this kind of stuff, where people don't even realize they're getting inoculated into a cult. And the thing that he always said that sticks out to me is if you feel like someone is getting drawn into a cult, don't try to pull them away, because the cult tells them, hey, people on the outside, they don't understand you. They're going to call you crazy. They're going to say that we're a cult. They're going to say all this stuff. If they say it, I'm telling you, that means that they're, too far gone. Just ignore them, cut them out of your life. So if you go to someone in your family or friend that's like, yo, I think you're in a cult, people are going to be like, oh man, this is what the leadership of the cult said was going to happen. I guess they're right. So what Jennings says the best way to deal with it is to ask open-ended questions, to be open-minded, to go into it and just be like, hey, so what's this group you're a part of? What are you guys getting into? What is, what are you guys all about? What do you guys stand for? Are you allowed to talk to people outside the group? Are you allowed to freely move? That kind of stuff. Additionally, if you are someone that, might be of lower income, maybe you're a single parent, you're going to be a target for these people to try to go after. I mean, again, my conversation with Bob Hamer, who was an FBI agent for many years, exploring these types of child abuse crimes, he said, these types of evil people, they're looking for people that need help. So the answer is not don't need help, but make sure you're getting help from people that actually stand to help you, that are not trying to isolate you from your family or from people around you, as Schäfer and the rest of the people in Colonia Dignidad did. So yeah, this Nazi pedo cult kind of stands as an example of this transnational systematic abuse that can be perpetuated not only by private actors, but also the state when they have some type of mutual benefit. And for decades, this enclave operated as the closed society where torture, sexual violence, forced labor, disappearances were all enabled not only by the silence of people at the top and the surrounding area that maybe knew about it, but the active support of authoritarian regimes in Chile. The crimes that were committed there were not isolated incidents, but a broader part of this kind of like state-sanctioned violence under a dictator. And when Colonia Dignidad eventually became a key site for the dictatorship, they just got impunity to do whatever they want. So the legacy of Colonia Dignidad is a reminder of unchecked power, secrecy, and institutions that fail to protect their people and the vulnerable. So if you ever feel like, maybe you see something like this where, people are getting drawn into this kind of stuff, hit the local authorities. If you're in a dictatorship, sorry. I don't know what you do if you're in a dictatorship and the state itself is enabling it. I mean, you got to just escape in the night. I don't know what else you can do. And I guess it's hard once you're in there and you're getting brainwashed by the leadership to be like, hey, if you leave, we're going to kill everyone, da, 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 da. At a certain point, you just got to be like, hey, I'm blowing this whole thing up. I'm out. But yeah, it's crazy. I'm curious what happened to the site today. Are you able to look up Colonia Dignidad today? Like, I wonder if the whole thing got leveled. I don't know what you can do with it. Maybe make it into like a memorial or something.
They said they renamed it, right?
I mean, yeah, they renamed it to, the Bavarian Society where people would hang out and do German shit. A tourist destination. That's kind of nice. Like, yeah, we do tours. We have a German-themed experience, including a hotel, a restaurant, a sex dungeon. I mean, that's wonderful. And there's also a memorial where they address the site's history, yada, yada, yada. But look at the mountains. Look at how beautiful these mountains are. Yes, they've renamed it to Via Bavaria. I mean, that's crazy. A range of leisure activities and cultural experiences for tourists. No thanks. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I'd be like, who made this pretzel? Who made this? Can you show me the people that made... come on. And does everything need to be a tourist site? Does everything? Like, it's just like... that's why... Can we see what a picture of it looks like? Go to images real quick. That shit looks like... they didn't even try to make it not look like a Nazi camp. That's crazy. Barbed wire and a big sign at the top.
Looks like a gravestone.
Yeah, like, it's crazy. I can't believe that people were not more privy to, like, what was going on. I'm just saying, dude. I guess it's just, like, if you're going to make a cult, like, getting ex-Nazis is the easiest thing you can do. It's like, hey, these people have already gotten brainwashed once, How hard could it be to run it back?
Also cozy up with the current leadership.
Yeah, exactly. Just get, like, a dictator, be like, hey, look, I know what we're doing is bad, but what you're doing is bad, too.
What happened to this Pinochet guy?
So it seems like, yeah, Pinochet does this military dictatorship from the 70s all the way until 1990. And ultimately, oh man, supporters of Pinochet refer to Pinochet as my general, while opponents call him Pinocho, Spanish for Pinocchio from the children's story. And basically gets arrested in London on some charges of some light stuff, genocide, terrorism, yada, yada, yada. In 1998, he's then arrested and for the first time was brought... A former government head was arrested under universal jurisdiction He's placed under house arrest in Britain, and then he's released in 2000 on the medical grounds by the Home Secretary without facing a trial. And then he returns to Chile in 2000, and they create the status of ex-president, which granted its holder immunity from prosecution to financial allowances. I mean, that's crazy. He died in 2006 and was given last rites, and he died of heart failure. I mean, that's just wild, dude.
Both of them went of heart failure. Isn't that interesting?
I guess, yeah. I guess that's just God being like, all right, let's stop this. Let's just stop this immediately. He was not granted a state funeral, but a military funeral. I mean, he just lived out the rest of his life and just died. Yeah, just lived out his... Oh, of course. He was initiated into the Masonic Lodge. He was a Mason, of course, dude. Got the Scottish Rite. I mean, yeah, dude. The worst people of history just always typically end just, having a chill time. Going to, like, some resort somewhere. Like, the worst people. And then, like, the pretty bad people. That's the thing. If you're going to be bad, be very bad. If you kill one person, you go to prison for a while. You kill 10 people, you get death penalty. If you kill, like, 1 million people, they're like, that's fine. Now, it is crazy. If you're going to kill 10, you might as well kill 1 million. Because that's the only way to not just get an electric chair.
Yeah, pretty much. Tread carefully with that argument, but yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, dude, it's wild. Like, hold on, I need to ask someone. I'm gonna ask my Chilean friend. All right, Alex, Alejandro, you're on my podcast right now. I'm doing some research on this guy Pinochet.
Okay.
What's up with that, dude? Like, do Chileans like this guy?
Some do. Just because, like, he had a lot of, like, economic advancements in Chile, kind of put us on the map economically, but he also, like, murdered a ton of people in the process. Anyone on the left wing or that was, like, gay, I mean, super far right wing stuff. I mean, he was putting people into, like, he would use the National Soccer Stadium to, like, do, like, firing squads. He'd chuck people out of helicopters.
National Soccer Stadium to put people in firing squads?
Yeah, actually, there's like a section at the stadium they, like, siphoned off for, like, the people that died there.
Oh, actually, my buddy Sebastian did an art installation where he put a tree up and they played a soccer game around it, I think in commemoration for this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. That's wild, dude. I'm just doing some stuff on this guy. I'm like, dude, this is crazy. He just lived out the rest of his life in Chile. He died when he was like 99 or something.
Yeah, I think in, like, the 80s. My parents actually lived in, like, the dictatorship, like, the regime. They had, like, a curfew of, like, 10 o'clock. There was, like, fucking tanks in the streets.
I mean, dude, you ever heard of Colonia Dignidad?
I have not.
Dude, this was like a Nazi concentration camp that this guy from Germany set up to, like, torture people, and he worked with Pinochet's government to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, the dude was definitely, like, kind of a wizard at that kind of thing.
Yeah, he's a wild guy.
Yeah, crazy fact, actually. My dad's cousin, his name is Hekar Negme, was, like, the left-wing spokesperson.
Whoa.
And yeah, so, like, spoke against Pinochet, and Pinochet, like, killed him, like, chopped his body up, threw it in the streets.
That's crazy.
Yeah. If you look up my last name on Google, like, he has, like, a Wikipedia page and everything. Like, there's, like, streets named after my uncle, like Negme Avenue or something.
No way.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So my family's not a big fan.
Yeah, I can imagine, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, whoa.
But I mean, yeah, it's just all about the ends justifying the means.
Yeah, I guess.
Look at it. I mean, Chile's kind of, like, in terms of, like, South America, like, an economic, powerhouse along with, like, Brazil.
Nah, dude, fuck this guy. He killed your uncle.
That's kind of how I see it.
I mean, damn. Well, shout out to him, though. That guy's, your uncle's a G for standing up to him.
Yeah, Hekar was a G.
Well, I didn't mean to bring this up while you're just probably having a casual day with your friend, and I'm just like, yo, dude, your uncle's dead? But
I mean, this is much better than what I'm looking at my corporate job on my desk. So
respect. Well, I appreciate you, brother. Mucho gusto, and I'll talk to you later.
All right, my friend.
God bless you. Well, there you have it, dude. Pinochet. Guy's a piece of shit. Hot take. I mean, that's crazy. He chopped up my boy's uncle. Turns out. So, if you are living under a dictator, try not to be, all right? And definitely don't stand up to him. I guess if you're going to live under a dictator, just, set up a camp or something and just be his boy, because then you'll just die of, like, heart failure later. I mean, that's wild. Man. Anyway, Christos, anything you want to contribute?
No, I think that's it.
You support Pinochet? You like him or not?
Absolutely not. For the record.
What about Colonia Dignidad?
Neither.
Also, Gabe, Colonia Dignidad, what is that, Colony of Dignity?
Yeah.
That's ironic. Anyway, this has been another episode of Camp. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you are interested in the strange, bizarre, weird, atrocious, morbid, or fascinating stories from all time through all corners of the world, this is the place for you. This is our tent. We do this every single week. If you're a fan, please subscribe. And we'll be back next week with, I'm sure, some more fascinating, controversial stories. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you. I'm on the road. You can see the link in the description, probably at the top comment. Please come see me doing 1 hour of stand-up comedy. It will be much more funny than the morbid atrocities that we talked about today. Additionally, we got some merch. You can check out the website, Religion Camp, Camp Goods, all that stuff. And we will see you guys later. Peace. What's up, people? Quick announcement. If you are a fan of Camp Gagnon or Religion Camp, I have great news because we are dropping History Camp. That's right. This is the channel where we're going to be exploring the most interesting, fascinating, controversial topics from all time throughout all history. Right? You probably know about Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Nikola Tesla. Interesting figures from history, and you probably learned about them in school and they were pretty boring, but not here. No. As you know, I was raised by a conspiracy theorist, so I'm going to be diving deep into all of the interesting, strange, occult, and secretive societal relationships that all of these famous, influential men from our shared past have. So if you're interested, please go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It will be pinned in the description as well as the comments. And if you're on Spotify, this doesn't really apply to you, but these episodes will be dropping as well. Just go ahead and give us a high rating because it really helps the show.